The crimson wastes earned their name. Red sand stretched to the horizon, broken only by jagged rocks that looked like broken teeth. The temperature swung from freezing cold at night to burning heat during the day. Nothing lived here except the hardest, meanest creatures on Vrex Prime, and the night maw. Krell's pack stood at the edge of the wastes with Bo-Ra and her human team. There were 4 humans, Bo-Ra herself, a marksman named Jun, a tracker called Min, and a medic named Hana. Small, soft, and according to traditional Vrexian thinking, completely unsuited for this environment. The night maw's territory covers 200 square miles, Sierra said, studying her scanner. It's been hunting these wastes for 30 years. It knows every cave, every hunting ground. How big is it? Jun asked. 3 times the size of a normal Vrexian, Krell said, with claws that can cut through stone and armor like paper. Its hide is so thick that most weapons can't penetrate it. And we're hunting this thing, Min said. Great, just great. We don't have to kill it, Thane said. Just survive it long enough to prove our worth. Bo-Ra shook her head. No, we prove nothing by running away. We track it, we face it, and we win. Krell looked at her with respect. You think like a Vrexian. I think like a warrior, Bo-Ra corrected. There's a difference. They entered the wastes as the sun was rising. The heat hit them immediately. Jun was sweating within minutes. Min had to stop twice to drink water. Hana moved slowly, conserving energy. The humans were struggling and they had barely started. Thane watched them with concern. They won't make it. They will, Krell said firmly. Because we'll help them. That was the first change. In traditional Vrexian hunts, if someone couldn't keep up, they were left behind. Survival of the fittest. But Rin gave Jun his cooling unit. Sierra slowed her pace to match the humans. Krell called for rest breaks before anyone asked. They were learning to hunt not as predators chasing prey, but as a team supporting each other. By midday, Min found the first sign of the night maw. Claw marks on a rock face, deep gouges that showed incredible power. The tracks led deeper into the wastes toward a region of caves and ravines. It's hunting, Sierra said, reading the signs. These tracks are fresh, maybe 6 hours old. What's it hunting? Hana asked. Probably us, Thane said. The night maw can sense movement from miles away. It knows we're here. That night they made camp in a shallow cave. Jun set up motion sensors around the perimeter. Min used thermal imaging to scan for heat signatures. Hana treated everyone's minor injuries from the day's travel. The humans used technology the Vrexians had never considered. Why do you rely on machines so much? Thane asked Jun. Because we're not as strong as you, Jun said simply. Our eyes aren't as sharp. Our noses aren't as sensitive. Our bodies aren't as tough. So we build tools to make up for what we lack. Isn't that cheating? Jun smiled. No, it's adapting. The strongest species isn't the one with the biggest claws. It's the one that can change when the world changes. Sierra, who had been listening, spoke quietly. Like us, we're changing. Yes, Jun agreed. You are. The attack came on the second night. Jun's sensors screamed a warning. Something massive was moving toward them fast. They had seconds to react. Defensive positions, Bo-Ra shouted. They scattered, taking cover behind rocks. The night maw emerged from the darkness like a nightmare made flesh. It was huge, covered in scales that looked like black armor. Its claws were the length of swords. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and Jun fired first. His weapon should have been powerful enough to hurt it. The blast hit the night maw square in the chest and did nothing. The creature didn't even slow down. It charged toward the humans, seeing them as the weak prey. Thane intercepted it, his own claws meeting the monsters. The impact threw Thane backward into a rock wall. The night maw kept coming. Krell and Rin attacked from the sides, trying to distract it. The beast was faster than anything that size should be. It turned and caught Rin with one massive paw, sending him tumbling across the sand. They were losing. The night maw was too strong, too fast, too powerful. Traditional Vrexian tactics weren't working. Fall back, Bo-Ra ordered. Tactical retreat, they ran. The night maw followed, roaring its fury. They led it through narrow passages between rocks, places where its size worked against it. Min dropped explosive charges behind them, not enough to hurt the creature, but enough to slow it down. They regrouped a mile away, breathing hard. Hana was already treating Rin's injuries. Jun's arm was broken. They were hurt, exhausted, and the night maw was still hunting them. We can't beat it with strength, Krell admitted. It's stronger than all of us combined. Then we don't fight with strength, Bo-Ra said. We fight with intelligence. They spent hours planning. Sierra tracked the nightmaw's patterns. Min analyzed its behavior. Jun studied its anatomy from his scanner data. Hana identified potential weaknesses. Krell and Thane planned the attack strategy. This was cooperation on a level neither species had tried before. Humans bringing technology and analysis, Vrexians bringing experience and physical power. Together they created a plan that neither could have made alone. On the third day they were ready. They found the nightmaw's lair, a deep cave system where the creature rested during the heat of the day. Instead of attacking directly, they set a trap. Jun rigged explosives to bring down the cave entrance. Min set up a perimeter of sensors and barriers. The humans created a kill zone using technology. Then Sierra did something brave and crazy. She walked into the nightmaw's lair alone. The creature woke immediately. It saw her alone and vulnerable and charged. Sierra ran. She was fast, but the nightmaw was faster. It chased her out of the cave right into the trap. The cave entrance exploded. Rocks fell, blocking the nightmaw's retreat. It was in the open now in the kill zone, but it was still incredibly dangerous. The coordinated attack began. Jun fired from high ground, targeting the creature's eyes. His shots weren't strong enough to penetrate its hide, but they could blind it. The nightmaw roared and stumbled. Thane and Rin attacked from the sides with Vrexian weapons, aiming for joints and soft spots that Hana had identified. The creature turned to face them. Bora threw a net made of high-tensile cables. It wrapped around the nightmaw's legs, not strong enough to hold it, but enough to slow it down. Min activated electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the creature's nervous system. And Krell, with everything he had learned, led the final attack. Not to kill, but to capture. They drove the nightmaw into a narrow ravine. The walls were steep on both sides. Bora's team had rigged the ravine with cables and supports. As the nightmaw entered, they triggered the trap. Nets fell from above. Cables wrapped around its legs, neck, and body. The creature roared and struggled, but slowly, inevitably, it was immobilized. They had done it. They had captured the nightmaw alive. The journey back to the Dominion capital took 3 days. They brought the captured nightmaw with them, sedated but alive in a transport cage. Word spread fast. By the time they arrived, thousands of Vrexians had gathered to see the impossible. The High Matriarch met them in the council chambers. She looked at the captured beast, then at the tired, wounded team of humans and Vrexians. "You did not kill it," she observed. "No," Krell said. "We proved mastery over it without destroying it. That's a greater show of power than simple death. And you did this together, humans and Vrexians, prey and predators." "No," Bora said firmly. "Warriors and warriors. We're not prey. We never were. You just saw us that way because we're different." The High Matriarch walked around the captured nightmaw, studying it carefully. "For 30 years, this creature has killed our hunters. 17 packs have fallen to it using traditional methods, but you succeeded where they failed. Because you used new methods," she turned to face the council. "My fellow council members, I ask you, what is the purpose of strength?" No one answered. The High Matriarch continued. "We have always said strength is for survival, for conquest, for dominance. But perhaps Krell is right. Perhaps strength is for building, for growing, for creating something greater than ourselves." Vex, the scarred council member who had opposed Krell before, stood up. "High Matriarch, I have fought for 60 years. I have killed hundreds. I have built my life on being strong and independent. But watching these humans and Vrexians work together, I saw something I have never seen before. I saw warriors of different species moving as one pack. I saw the weak supporting the strong, and the strong protecting the weak. I saw true power." The High Matriarch nodded slowly. "The council will vote. Should we establish formal alliance with humanity? Should we allow this new way of cooperation?" One by one, the council members voted. It wasn't unanimous. Some clung to the old ways, but the majority voted yes. "It is decided," the High Matriarch said. "The Vrexian Dominion will ally with humanity. Krell's pack will become the first joint Vrexian human unit. They will serve as a bridge between our peoples." Hyun, who had been watching from the side, stepped forward. "High Matriarch, with respect, they're not just a bridge. They're something new. Neither purely Vrexian nor purely human. They're a pack that proves we can be stronger together." "Yes," the High Matriarch agreed. "And perhaps that is the future. Not Vrexians or humans, but something greater than either." 3 months later, the Morning Star had been modified to house both species. The classroom was enormous, built to hold students from 12 different species. Giant windows showed the stars beyond Nexus Prime Station, where the Galactic Coalition had kept peace for 300 years. Inside, holographic displays floated above each desk, showing complex ship designs and battle formations. Professor Velthar stood at the front, his forearms moving gracefully as he manipulated the holograms. He was Velkari, a reptilian species known for their brilliant minds and long lives. At 200 years old, he had taught thousands of students about starship design. His scales gleamed under the classroom lights as he spoke with pride. "Behold the Sovereign-class dreadnought," he announced, expanding a massive hologram that filled half the room. "The finest warship ever created by our coalition. 17 layers of ablative armor protect the command deck. Energy shields that can withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. Redundant hull sections ensure survival even under extreme damage." The students leaned forward, their various eyes and sensors fixed on the beautiful ship. Cadet Mina, a young Velkari with bright green scales, nodded enthusiastically. She was top of her class and never missed a chance to show it. "Every square meter is protected," Velthar continued, zooming in on different sections. "From bow to stern, port to starboard, dorsal to ventral. No weak points, no vulnerabilities. This is what 3,000 years of peaceful engineering creates." In the back row, Captain Jiwan sat quietly. He was human, one of the few in the academy. Humans had joined the coalition only 50 years ago, making them the newest members. Most species considered them enthusiastic but primitive, still learning the basics of proper civilization. Jiwan wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's defense fleet, and his face showed nothing as he watched the presentation. Next to him, Commander Hyun took notes on a data pad. She was also human, younger than Jiwan, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. They had been invited to observe the class as a courtesy, nothing more. The coalition wanted to show the new species how real warships were built. "Note the symmetry," Velthar said, rotating the hologram. "Perfect balance of armor distribution. Every section is equally defended because we cannot predict where an enemy might strike. Therefore, we protect everything." Admiral Quintar, another Velkari, sat in the back corner as a guest observer. His chest displayed medals from decades of service. He had commanded fleets during the few minor conflicts the coalition had faced. His presence made the students sit straighter, more attentive. Velthar opened another hologram, this one showing a human destroyer. The ship was smaller, sleeker, and looked almost aggressive compared to the elegant coalition designs. "This is the EDFS Soul, a human warship. As you can see, they have attempted to copy our methods, but their limited experience shows in the execution." Some students chuckled. Mina smiled knowingly. Humans trying to build real warships was like children playing with adult tools. Jiwan raised his hand. Velthar blinked in surprise. Guests rarely interrupted lectures. But he was a teacher first, so he nodded. "Yes, Captain?" "I have a question about ship design," Jiwan said in slightly accented galactic standard. He stood up and walked toward the hologram of the Soul. "Why are your warships missing armor here?" He pointed to the dorsal spine of the human ship, then to the ventral engineering section, then to several other areas along the hull. On the hologram, these sections were highlighted in his pointing, and they clearly had thinner plating than the rest of the vessel. The classroom filled with confused murmurs. Cadet Tyke, a quiet human student, leaned forward with interest. He had wondered about the same thing but never dared to ask. "Missing armor?" Mina laughed, her voice carrying across the room. "Captain, I think you misunderstand the display. All warships have armor. The hologram simply shows different densities and materials. Those areas you indicate are probably just different alloy compositions." Jiwan shook his head. He manipulated the hologram, pulling up a detailed cross-section of the Soul. The image zoomed in, showing the internal structure layer by layer. Where coalition ships had meter-thick armor plating everywhere, the human ship had gaps. Large sections protected by only thin hulls. Spaces that seemed deliberately weakened. "No," Jiwan said quietly. "These areas have minimal armor. Some sections have only basic hull plating less than 10 centimeters thick. Your ships have at least a meter of protection everywhere. Ours do not. Velthar moved closer, his professional interest overcoming his surprise. His 4 hands manipulated the hologram, checking the data himself. His eyes widened. This cannot be correct. No naval architect would design such vulnerability. These sections would be destroyed by even moderate weapons fire. Yes, Jiwan agreed. They would. Then it is a mistake, Admiral Quintar said, standing from his seat. His voice carried authority. Perhaps a design flaw your engineers have not yet corrected. The Coalition can provide assistance with proper armor distribution calculations. Hyun stood as well, joining Jiwan at the front. She pulled up more human ship designs. Destroyers, cruisers, frigates. All of them showed the same pattern. Heavily armored core sections, but with deliberately weak outer areas. It was not a mistake. It was consistent across every human military vessel. It is not a flaw, she said simply. It is intentional. The room went completely silent. Even the soft hum of the station's life support seemed to fade. Students stared at the holograms, trying to understand what they were seeing. How could any species deliberately make their warships weak? Mina shook her head, her confidence shaken. But why? In battle, those areas would be targeted. Any competent tactical system would identify the weak points and focus fire there. Your ships would be crippled in minutes. Correct, Jiwan said. He highlighted one of the weak sections, showing its internal structure. Strange materials lined the corridors, gel-filled chambers, honeycomb structures, empty spaces that seemed to serve no purpose. Any enemy would target these areas. Any smart tactical computer would calculate these as optimal strike points. Professor Velthar's tail swished in confusion, a Velkari sign of deep thought. Captain Jiwan, I have studied naval architecture for 150 years. I have designed ships for 8 different species. Please explain to me why humans would build warships that invite enemy fire to their weakest points. Jiwan looked at the hologram of the soul, his expression unreadable. The ship floated in the display, showing its scars from the weak sections, its unusual design, its defiance of every rule the Coalition had established over millennia of peaceful shipbuilding. Then he looked back at the class, at the confused students and the fascinated professors, at the admiral who commanded fleets but had never truly faced an enemy willing to die to win, at a civilization that had forgotten what real war looked like. Because those areas are designed to be hit, Jiwan said. His voice was quiet but clear, carrying to every corner of the silent classroom. We want the enemy to shoot there. The words hung in the air like a challenge, like a revelation, like a threat. The hologram of the soul rotated slowly, its weak points glowing in the display, suddenly looking less like mistakes and more like traps. Professor Velthar stared at the human captain, his 4 hands frozen in mid-gesture. Admiral Quintar's metals clinked softly as he leaned forward. Mina's confident smile had disappeared completely. For 300 years, the Coalition had built ships to avoid damage. Now they were facing a species that built ships to control it. The difference was terrifying. The simulation center occupied an entire deck of Nexus Prime Station. Massive holographic projectors created a 3-dimensional battlefield, where commanders could test tactics without risking real ships or lives. The Coalition used it to train officers, and the scenarios were famous for their accuracy. What happened in simulation usually happened in reality. The students filed into the observation gallery, a raised platform surrounding the central projection space. Professor Velthar took position at the teaching console, ready to monitor and explain the action. The other faculty members gathered nearby, their interest clearly piqued. This was no longer a routine class. In the command pits below, Admiral Quintar stood at the Coalition tactical station. His 4 hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, calling up ship rosters and formation options. 2 Velkari officers from his staff joined him as advisors. They spoke in low voices, discussing approach vectors and firing solutions. On the opposite side, Jiwan and Hyun stood at the human tactical station. Their setup looked simpler, with fewer displays and options. Human ships did not have as many sophisticated systems as Coalition vessels. another mark of their relative inexperience in space warfare. Professor Velthar's voice echoed through the chamber. The scenario is simple. A strategic choke point, the kind of location where retreating is not an option. Admiral Quintar commands 5 coalition heavy cruisers. Captain Jiwan commands 7 human destroyers. Mina did quick calculations in her head. The coalition ships have superior firepower. The numbers advantage for humans will not matter. We shall see, Velthar said, initiating the simulation. The holographic space filled with stars and a nebula, creating the tactical environment. 2 asteroid clusters provided cover on the flanks. A gravity well from a nearby dead planet limited maneuvering options. It was a constrained battlefield, the type where ships could not simply run away. 5 coalition cruisers appeared, their hulls gleaming silver and blue. Each was 3 times the size of a human destroyer. Their shield generators hummed to life, creating overlapping defensive fields. Beautiful ships, powerful ships built by a civilization that had mastered the art of peaceful engineering. 7 human destroyers materialized opposite them. Smaller, darker, more angular. The Soul led the formation, its hull showing the thin armor sections Jiwan had pointed out earlier. Next to it, the Busan, the Daegu, the Incheon, the Ulsan, the Pohang, and the Jeju. They looked aggressive and predatory compared to the elegant coalition vessels. Coalition fleet. You may begin when ready, Velthar announced. Admiral Quintar did not hesitate. His formation moved forward in a perfect wall, 5 ships advancing in parallel. Their shields overlapped, creating zones of double protection. Their weapons remained powered but not yet firing, conserving energy until targets were in optimal range. It was textbook coalition tactics, the kind taught in every academy. The human ships scattered. Cadet Tyke leaned forward, confused. They broke formation immediately. That is wrong, is it? Professor Velthar asked, watching carefully. The 7 human destroyers split into 3 groups, moving in erratic patterns. The Soul and Busan went high, angling toward the asteroid cluster. 3 ships went low, using the gravity well for speed. 2 remained in the center, but moved in unpredictable zigzags. Chaos, one of Quintar's advisors said. They have no coordination. Or we cannot see the pattern yet, the Admiral replied, more cautious. He ordered his ships to maintain formation and target the center group first. Eliminate the obvious threat, then deal with the flankers. The coalition cruisers opened fire. Plasma lances crossed the distance in seconds. Brilliant blue streams of superheated matter. They struck the 2 human destroyers in the center, hitting exactly where the ships were weakest. The unarmored sections. The human ship's damage indicators spiked immediately. 20% hull damage, 30%. The coalition tactical computer reported critical hits on both vessels. They should withdraw, Mina said. That much damage, they cannot fight effectively. But the human ships did not withdraw. They did not even slow down. Their weapons fired back, railgun slugs and missiles streaking toward the coalition formation. The damage seemed to have no effect on their combat capability. Yun's voice came over the command channel, calm and measured. Seoul, Busan, execute flanking pattern Gamma. All other ships, maintain pressure on the center. They are still fighting, Tyke whispered. With 30% damage, they are still fully operational. Quintar noticed it too. His tail twitched in surprise. Focus fire on the lead center ship. Destroy it quickly. More plasma lances struck home. The human destroyer's damage climbed to 40%, 50%, 60%. Sections of hull glowed red-hot. Atmosphere vented from breaches. The tactical display showed the ship should be crippled. It kept shooting. Impossible, one of the Valkyrie advisors said. That damage should have disabled weapons and engines. Juwan's voice came through clearly. Damage channels functioning as designed. Core systems unaffected. Continue the attack, and suddenly the Admiral understood. All that damage was hitting the areas designed to be hit. The weak sections, the sacrificial corridors, the empty spaces filled with energy-absorbing gel. The weapons and engines buried in the protected core remained untouched. Meanwhile, the Seoul and Busan had completed their flanking maneuver. They came down from the asteroid cluster at full speed, targeting the rightmost coalition cruiser. Their weapons focused on a single point, hammering the ship's shields with concentrated fire. Coalition shields were designed to withstand distributed damage. They spread incoming energy across their entire surface, dissipating it safely. But the human ships were not distributing their fire. They were concentrating everything on one small section of shield, on one ship, overloading it through sheer focused brutality. The shield collapsed. For just 2 seconds, a gap appeared in the protection. 2 seconds was enough. Railgun slugs punched through the cruiser's armor. The coalition ship's symmetrical design meant vital systems were everywhere. One slug hit the port power relay. Another penetrated the secondary computer core. A third breached the weapons magazine. The cruiser went dark, drifting powerless. Not destroyed, but completely disabled. One perfect ship taken out by damaged vessels that should have been fleeing. How? Mina asked, staring at the tactical display. Our ship barely took any damage, and it is destroyed. Their ships are falling apart, and they are fine. Professor Velthar highlighted the different ship designs for the class. The coalition cruiser had systems throughout the hull. When penetration occurred, critical components were hit. The human doctrine concentrates everything in the core. When their outer hull is breached, nothing important is damaged. The battle continued. Admiral Quintar was no fool. He adjusted his tactics, trying to target the human ship's cores. But the human vessels moved erratically, making precision targeting impossible. And their return fire never stopped, no matter how damaged they became. The center group, now showing 70% damage on both ships, continued their frontal assault. The 3 ships from the low approach emerged from the gravity well at high speed, hitting the coalition formation from below. The Seoul and Busan, having disabled one cruiser, moved to their next target. Quintar's formation began to fracture. The perfect wall broke apart as individual ships tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Coalition doctrine did not prepare them for this. Enemies were supposed to retreat when damaged. They were supposed to fight conservatively, protecting their expensive vessels. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose. Another coalition cruiser took a hit that penetrated its armor. The shell struck the reactor control system, causing a cascade failure. The ship's power dropped to 30%. It could not fight effectively. It began withdrawing from the battle. 2 cruisers down, Hyun reported. Seoul at 78% damage, but all systems green. Busan at 61% damage, minor engine impairment. Nearly 80% damage, and the Seoul was still fully combat capable. The number seemed impossible, but there it was on every display. The 3 remaining coalition cruisers rallied, forming a tight defensive triangle. They focused their fire on the most damaged human ships, trying to push past the threshold where even protected cores could not survive. The destroyer Incheon, already at 75% damage, took several direct hits in quick succession. 85%, 90%. The ship was barely holding together, hull breaches across its entire outer structure. Incheon, withdraw, Jiwon ordered. Negative, Captain, came the response. Core system still functional. Maintaining attack. At 93% damage, the Incheon fired its last missiles and finally went dark. But it had absorbed fire meant for other ships. Its sacrifice let the Seoul and Daegu close to point-blank range with a coalition cruiser. Point-blank range meant the human ships took more damage. The Seoul climbed to 85%, but it also meant their weapons could not miss. Railgun slugs tore through armor at close range, and the coalition cruiser's evenly distributed systems became its weakness. Hits landed on crew quarters, weapons bays, sensor arrays, life support. Each hit damaged something important because everything was important. The cruiser tried to retreat. The simulation center transformed into a command center in seconds. The tactical displays that had shown a practice battle now showed real enemy contacts approaching Nexus Prime. 40 ships. Their design unfamiliar. Their intentions clear. The peaceful academy had become the front line. Professor Velthar moved to the main console, pulling up all available data. Sensor readings indicate heavy armor, energy weapons, standard shield configurations. Similar design philosophy to coalition vessels. His voice remained steady, but his hands shook slightly. He had taught naval warfare for decades without ever expecting to see it. Admiral Quintar was already in motion, his military training overriding the shock. How many coalition ships are in system? 8, Admiral, a station officer replied. 6 light cruisers on patrol. Your flagship, the Bright Dawn, and the defense platform guarding the station. Against 40. The Admiral's tail went rigid. Those were not good numbers, even for fresh crews with undamaged ships. And his ships had crews trained for peacetime duties, not actual war. Jiwan and Hyun were at their console checking something. Hyun looked up. 2 human destroyers are also in system. The Seoul and the Busan. Both are docked for routine maintenance. 2 destroyers, Quintar said, the hopelessness clear in his voice. We are outnumbered 5-1, and we have no reinforcements within 3 days' travel. Mina stood frozen in the observation gallery, her academic confidence shattered. This was not supposed to happen. The coalition had kept peace for 300 years. There were no threats. There were no enemies. The galaxy was civilized, except it was not. Somewhere beyond coalition space, someone had built a fleet. Someone who did not want peace. The tactical display updated. A communication came through from the enemy fleet. Not audio, just text in several languages. The translation appeared on every screen. We are the Krell Dominion. You occupy systems that belong to us. Surrender your station and your ships. You have 1 hour. Cadet Take felt his stomach tighten. The Krell Dominion. He had read about them in his xenology classes. A militaristic empire that had remained isolated for centuries, rejecting all contact with the coalition. They were supposed to be far away, not interested in expansion. Supposed to be. Clearly the intelligence was wrong. We need to evacuate the station, someone said. Get the civilians to safety. Where? Admiral Quintar asked quietly. Our ships cannot carry 50,000 people, and they would be destroyed before reaching the jump point. The hard truth settled over everyone. Nexus Prime was a diplomatic and educational hub, not a fortress. Its single defense platform had weapons, but not enough. Its shield could withstand minor attacks, but not a sustained assault from 40 warships. Jiwan looked at Hyun. She nodded. They both moved toward Admiral Quintar. Admiral, Jiwan said, request permission to engage the enemy. Quintar stared at him. Captain, you have 2 destroyers. They have 40 capital ships. This is not a simulation. Your crews will die. Yes, sir, Jiwan acknowledged. But if we do nothing, everyone on this station dies. If we engage, we might buy time for evacuation. Or we might make them reconsider the attack. How? The Admiral's voice carried desperation. You saw the simulation. Human tactics work against equal numbers when your ships can absorb damage while fighting. But this is not equal. They will overwhelm you in minutes, Hyun spoke up. Admiral, may I be frank? Please. Your ships are not ready for this fight. Your crews trained during peacetime. They practiced formations and procedures, but they never expected to die. They will fight bravely, but they will fight carefully, trying to protect their ships because that is what they were taught. The words stung because they were true. Quintar commanded good sailors, but they had never faced real combat. They knew the theory of war, but not the reality. Human crews are different, Jiwan continued. We train for the worst case. Every sailor on the Seoul and the Busan has practiced fighting a damaged ship. They have drilled emergency procedures until they dream about them. They know how to seal breaches while under fire, how to reroute power through destroyed systems, how to keep fighting when everything is falling apart. Because humans come from a world that prepared us for war. Hyun added softly, Earth's history is not peaceful, Admiral. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. When we reached space, we brought those lessons with us. We hope to never need them, but today, we need them. Professor Velthar listened from his console, his academic mind processing something uncomfortable. He had always considered humanity's violent history a mark of their primitiveness. Species that evolved past conflict were superior, or so the coalition believed. But now, facing actual violence, that violent history had become valuable experience. What do you propose? Quintar asked. Jiwan pulled up the tactical display. Give us command of the defense. We will take the Seoul and Busan directly into their formation. We will draw their fire, make them focus on us. While they are distracted, your ships and the defense platform target their flagships and command vessels. That is suicide. That is tactics. Jiwan corrected. The Krell ships will be like your ships, built to avoid damage. When we charge them, they will see easy targets. They will fire everything at us, expecting quick kills. But we will not die quickly. We will absorb their attacks and keep fighting. And while they waste ammunition on us, you destroy their ability to coordinate. Mina understood suddenly. The humans were offering to be bait. They would sacrifice their ships, their lives, to create an opening for the coalition fleet. It was brutal and practical and deeply disturbing. I cannot order you to die, the Admiral said. You are not ordering us, sir. We are volunteering. The station shook slightly. On the displays, the Krell fleet had fired a warning shot at the defense platform. The shot was absorbed by shields, but the message was clear. The hour was counting down. Admiral Quintar looked at the two human officers. They were young compared to him, barely a century old together. Their species was new to space, still learning, still making mistakes. But they were not afraid. Or if they were, they hid it well. "Permission granted," he said finally. "Take command of the defense. May your ancestors watch over you." Jiwan and Hyun saluted and ran from the simulation center. They had less than an hour to reach their ships, brief their crews, and prepare for a battle they would probably not survive. Professor Velthar watched them go, then looked at his students. Young beings from a dozen species, all staring at the tactical displays in shock. They had come to the academy to learn about war as history, as theory, as something that happened long ago. Now it was happening here, now to them. "Professor," Tyke asked quietly, "will they survive?" Velthar wanted to lie to comfort his student. But he was a teacher, and teachers dealt in truth. "I do not know, cadet. Human doctrine is built for survival, but they face overwhelming numbers. Theoretically, they should be destroyed in the first engagement. But humans have a saying I learned when they joined the coalition. They say theory stops working when you get punched in the face. Their entire military philosophy is built around that idea. They plan for when theory fails." On the main display, the Seoul and Busan undocked from the station. Both ships showed maintenance warnings. Minor systems offline for repair. They were not at full capacity. They were about to face 40 warships while damaged and outnumbered. They launched anyway. The coalition fleet formed up around Nexus Prime, 6 light cruisers, and the Admiral's flagship. The defense platform powered up its weapons. Everyone was ready, or as ready as peacetime sailors could be for war. Mina found herself praying to ancestors she had never believed in. Not for victory, because victory seemed impossible, but for the humans to be right, for their brutal, painful, terrible approach to warfare to work one more time. Jiwan's voice came over the command channel, calm and clear. "All coalition vessels, this is the Seoul. We are beginning our attack run. Stay in defensive formation until we create the opening. Target their command ships as discussed. Remember, we do not need to destroy them all. We just need to make them decide we are not worth the cost." "Acknowledged, Seoul," Admiral Quintar replied. "Good hunting, Captain." "See you on the other side, Admiral." The two human destroyers accelerated toward the Krell fleet at maximum speed. 40 enemy ships turned to face them, weapons charging, shields at full power. The trap was obvious. The odds were impossible. The outcome seemed certain, but the Seoul and Busan did not slow down. They dove directly into the enemy formation like predators attacking prey, like warriors embracing death, like humans doing what humans had always done when cornered. They fought. On Nexus Prime, 50,000 people watched their defenders rush toward destruction. Some prayed, some cried, some stood in silent respect. Professor Velthar recorded everything for the archives, knowing that this battle would be studied for centuries. Whether as a heroic last stand or as the day humanity showed the galaxy what war truly looked like, he did not yet know. The Krell fleet opened fire, and the battle began. The first barrage hit the Seoul like a hammer blow. 20 Krell warships fired simultaneously, their plasma cannons and particle beams converging on the single human destroyer. The weapons struck exactly where the Krell tactical computers predicted they would. Where the armor was thinnest, where the hull was weakest, where damage would be catastrophic. The damaged channels, Jiwan felt the ship shake beneath his feet. Alarms blared across the bridge. Damage reports flooded in from every section. The dorsal spine took a direct hit. The ventral engineering section was breached. The port damage channel was venting atmosphere. The tactical display showed 38% hull damage in the first 10 seconds. "Damage control teams to all sections," Jiwan ordered, his voice steady. "Seal breaches, maintain core integrity. Weapons, return fire. Navigation, maintain attack vector. Core systems green," his engineering officer reported. "Reactor at full power. Weapons online. Engines at 95%. 38% damage, and the ship was still fully operational, just as designed." The Busan, following close behind the Seoul, took its own barrage. Commander Hyun watched her damage climb to 42% as Krell weapons found every weak point her ship offered. She smiled grimly. Let them shoot the bait. Let them waste ammunition on corridors filled with gel and empty storage. All weapons focus fire on the lead Krell cruiser, she commanded. Target their shield generators. Both human ships fired everything they had. Railgun slugs, missiles, plasma torpedoes, kinetic penetrators. The weapons were not as advanced as Krell technology, but they did not need to be. They just needed to hit the same spot over and over until something broke. The Krell fleet was organized like the Coalition fleet, built on similar principles. Symmetrical formations, even armor distribution. Shields designed to absorb distributed damage. They expected enemies to spread fire across multiple targets, to fight conservatively, to retreat when damaged. They did not expect two ships to ignore 40 enemies and concentrate everything on a single target. The lead Krell cruiser's shields flickered under the assault, not because the human weapons were individually powerful, but because they all hit the exact same point. Every round, every missile, every bolt of energy struck within a 10-meter radius. The shield could not distribute the load. It could not spread the impact across its surface. It collapsed. For 3 seconds, the Krell cruiser had no protection. 3 seconds was long enough. A railgun slug punched through armor and hit something vital. The cruiser's weapons went offline, emergency systems screaming warnings. On Nexus Prime, the observation displays showed the Sol now at 59% damage. Cadet Mina could not understand how the ship was still moving. That much destruction should mean crew dead, systems failing, the vessel breaking apart. But the damage was all in the outer hull. The sacrificial sections, the areas humans expected to lose. Coalition fleet, begin your attack. Jiwan's voice came over the command channel. Target the command ships in the center of their formation. We will keep their attention forward. Admiral Quintar had watched the first exchange with growing understanding. The Krell were making the same mistake he had made in the simulation. They saw damaged ships and assumed victory was near. They did not realize the damage was irrelevant. All ships advance, he ordered. Target the Krell flagship. Defense platform, provide covering fire. The Coalition fleet moved forward, and for the first time in 300 years, they were not trying to protect their ships from damage. They were trying to hurt the enemy more than the enemy hurt them. It was a subtle shift in thinking, but it changed everything. The Krell fleet split its attention, some ships continuing to hammer the human destroyers, others turning to face the Coalition advance. This divided focus was exactly what Jiwan had wanted. An enemy shooting at 2 targets is weaker against both. The Sol took another devastating barrage. 73% damage now. The outer hull was a wreck. Entire sections open to space, armor melted, structure exposed. Crew members worked in vacuum suits, sealing breaches from the inside, rerouting power through destroyed conduits, doing what they had trained their entire careers to do: keep the ship fighting. Professor Velthar was narrating the battle for the station, his academic voice steady despite his fear. The human vessels have sustained damage that would destroy any Coalition ship, yet they continue to operate at near full capability. This is not luck. This is intentional design combined with superior damage control training. Cadet Tyke watched the Busan's damage climb past 60%. He saw crew members on the internal cameras working calmly in sections that were on fire, that were venting atmosphere, that were falling apart. They were not panicking. They were doing their jobs because this was what they expected. The Krell flagship took hits from 3 Coalition cruisers simultaneously. Its shields held, but barely. The Krell commander had to make a decision: continue attacking the nearly destroyed human ships or deal with the fresh Coalition vessels approaching from behind. He chose wrong. He ordered most of his fleet to finish off the Sol and Busan, assuming they were about to break. Only a few ships turned to engage the Coalition force, but the human ships did not break. The Sol reached 81% damage and kept shooting. The Busan hit 74% and maintained formation. They should have been dead. By every calculation, every tactical doctrine, every rule of naval warfare, they should have been drifting hulks. They were not. And while the Krell wasted ammunition on targets that refused to die, the Coalition fleet struck at their command structure. Admiral Quintar targeted the flagship's communication arrays, weapons control, sensor clusters, not trying to destroy the ship but to blind and deafen it. The Krell had built their fleet assuming ships either survived untouched or were destroyed completely. They had no doctrine for fighting while damaged. When their flagship lost sensors and communications, chaos spread through the fleet. Individual ships tried to compensate, breaking formation, making their own decisions. Coordination collapsed. Hyun saw the opening. Seoul, target the damaged cruiser from earlier. Busan will take the ship to its left. Remove their capability to reorganize. Both human destroyers, barely holding together, pressed their attack. The Seoul was at 85% damage now. Its hull was more empty space than solid metal. But its weapons still fired, its engine still burned, its crew still fought. The Krell cruiser, already damaged, took focused fire from the dying human ship. More systems failed. The cruiser went dark, its crew abandoning ship in escape pods. Another Krell ship, seeing the Seoul's condition, moved in for the kill. It fired everything at close range, point blank, impossible to miss. The barrage hit the Seoul's remaining outer hull and finally penetrated to the protected core. Ji-won felt explosions through his deck. Engineering report. Secondary reactor offline. Primary reactor holding. Life support compromised in sections 4 through 7. Weapons reduced to 60% capacity. Engines at 40%, 92% damage. The ship was held together by emergency force fields and the determination of its crew. But it was still fighting. The Krell commander finally understood what he was facing. These were not normal ships with normal crews following normal doctrine. These were beings who built vessels expecting them to be destroyed, who trained to fight in conditions that should be impossible, who treated survival as optional and the mission as mandatory. He had never faced an enemy like this. His fleet was built to win decisive battles against honorable opponents. The humans were not honorable. They were practical. They calculated that 2 ships would die, but 40 ships might decide the cost was too high. The calculation was working. All ships withdraw, the Krell commander ordered. Fall back to the jump point. This system is not worth the losses. On Nexus Prime, nobody believed it at first. The Krell fleet was retreating. 40 ships against 10, and they were withdrawing. The tactical displays showed enemy vessels breaking off, moving away from the battle, their weapons powering down. Mina stared at the Seoul's status. 94% damaged. By rights, by logic, by every rule she had learned, that ship should not exist. But it did. And it had won. The coalition fleet did not pursue. They had taken damage too, though far less than the human ships. Admiral Quintar knew his crews were not ready for a running battle. Let the Krell go. They had defended the station. That was enough. All coalition vessels returned to defensive positions, he ordered. Then more quietly, Seoul Busan status report. Ji-won looked at his bridge. Half the stations were dark. Emergency lighting flickered. The deck was scorched from internal fires, but his crew was alive and his ship could still move. Seoul reporting, Admiral. We are heavily damaged but operational. Requesting priority docking for emergency repairs. Granted, Captain. And Captain Ji-won? Yes, Admiral? Thank you. The Seoul and Busan limped back to Nexus Prime, barely holding together, leaving trails of debris and venting atmosphere. The station's repair crews stared in disbelief at the wrecks that had just saved them. The Seoul was more whole than hull. The Busan was only slightly better, but they were intact where it mattered. The reactors still powered. The crew still lived. The mission was complete. Professor Velthar stood in the simulation center.